Alright guys, so in this video I'm going to show you how I paint the shadows and lines on the ground. So first I use this large brush, which actually helps me to paint the light base area of the ground first. And you can see that the ground is actually not completely white because we have some very light brown kind of colors that actually make up the ground, right? So we are going to make sure that it's almost dry first before we paint the rest of the layers on top. Right, so just make sure that this darker brown kind of strokes do not actually spread out too much when it combines with the lighter brown that we just did. So I'm just starting from the bottom right here. So this part here is actually going to make sure that we have this shadow area, and this is done by mixing some browns with some grays. And so we have this light browns and we have this, you know, darker browns that are being mixed together, and you can see it's slightly you know, kind of like smudging together with the lighter brown that we just did earlier on. But just try to make sure that it doesn't it doesn't lose control, and just make sure that we have all these browns that are being added so that they will also cover this shadow area. So make sure they don't go into the human figures, make sure that they don't go into the brick areas, you know. So I'm just using the side of the large brush to make sure that I have all these, you know, shapes that are being very accurately depicted, okay, using my this brush. So you can see right here that the brown tones are being varied, right? So we have the very pale kind of light brown, which make up the sunlit area of the ground, and then at the bottom part here we have this darker brown, which actually makes up, you know, these shadows. And again, we want to just make sure everything blends in. So we have, you know, all these very quick strokes. So what I did was I just added in some of those darker strokes, okay, once it's dry, to make sure that we have all these shadows and cracks on the floor that is being added. And so I used dark lines of various tones and thicknesses to depict the cracks and the shadows. Right, so we have all these, you know, different lines. So again, we need to make sure that we have all these, you know, different thicknesses and different tones and different colors. We have browns, we have blacks. So all these broken lines can be used to depict the cracks and the you know, the tiles on the floor, the kinds of like patterns that we see. Right, so this is done after we have finished the first layer, and the first layer is done by, you know, adding that large brush. And once it's dry, and only when it's dry, can we add these lines on top. Right, so these lines are being done, you know, in order to make sure that we have all these cracks and all these, you know, breaks and all these things that are happening. And so these are again of different sizes and different textures and different thicknesses of the lines, different kinds of shapes for the things, for the different sections, you know. So all these changes will actually help you to recreate these, you know, different kinds of patterns that we see on the ground, and that will add interest. And so as we move towards the right hand side, you can see I'm adding a little bit more of those brown tones, and on top we can see that I actually added some gray, bluish gray tones. So again, the colors are actually changing subtly, even though they look mostly like brown, right? So that's the kind of you know, changes that is going on in my mind unconsciously and subconsciously when I paint, because these are the things that I have practiced for many years, and I have been, you know, accustomed to making sure that everything changes as we go along, you know, so that we have all these different things that are going on that will really make the painting look more interesting. Right, so I'm just adding another layer for that shadow cast by the woman right there on the left hand side, and this shadow is on top of the shadow that is cast by the building, right? So that's how we actually do shadows. First do a base layer, and then we can do a darker layer of grey on top. Right, so we have this kind of, you know, shadows, and of course these cracks and these lines on the floor are now being done. Again, we have different sizes of rectangles, different sizes of shapes and thicknesses of the lines, and of course using that large brush again to paint some of the lighter areas. So using that brush, I'm just trying to recreate, to paint and to complete the human figures at the back, okay, in the background. So we have this man who is carrying a baby, and then just trying to also complete the shadow here on the right hand side. And I used a small brush to try to complete the figures right here. So this man is actually, looking, the back of the head is actually facing us. So we want to make sure that we have, these things that actually make up the head. Okay, he doesn't have much hair, and so we use some gray to represent the top part of the head. And then we have this baby whom this man is carrying, and we are using some light reddish tones and some pink tones to actually depict this baby which this man is carrying. And so we would want to make sure that we have, all these colors that make up the man and the baby itself. And this is really, amazing when you see all these details come alive, when you see all these, different things that really make the entire painting come alive just by all these details that seem simple, but they're actually what forms the interest points of my paintings, right? So these are some of the very nice kinds of ways that you can depict details, again using different pinks for the baby and using that small brush to kind of like create these different things that are going on. So using some of the dark blue tones, I'm trying to make sure that we have this sleeve of the man being done, and just trying to very quickly make sure that we have all these lines, and also filling up these shapes with the small brush, and just making sure that all these areas that we left out are being filled in with lighter colors. Right, so this is very important when we actually do human figures, and when we actually do all these things, because they are very small and there's always small little details that will really make the human figure stand out because of this amazing kind of way that I actually left out the details first and then filling it in later with lighter colors. Okay, so adding in some lines for the shadow. So again, doing the shadow first and then adding some lines to show more details on top, and that will make the shadow even more interesting, right? As what I'm doing right now, using that brush. And so just adding very pale lines, very pale light brown and light gray lines to actually show all these different kinds of things that we see on the on the floor, on the ground. And so we have all these different kinds of things that are very important when it comes to doing the ground, right? So it's not just one color, but we have all these different colors that make up all these details that we see on the ground. Right, so now we have this bag, this bricks, this thing that we see that I'm painting right now, which is the this bag right here. So I'm using some light blues and some darker kind of color to paint the bottom part right there. So I'm just using some strokes to very quickly represent all these different kinds of colors. And this is actually a bag, right? So I use shades of blue, brown and black to paint the bag and the bricks on the ground. So on the ground we see right there this bag. Okay, this is probably some bags left there because of construction, and you can see I'm just using a few strokes to represent this bag. And then we have this brown, and of course I'm going to use this brush to create those strokes for the side of the bag. Right, so I'm actually using some of the brown strokes to finish up the top part of the bag, and then we have some of the gray strokes. So these gray strokes are added to recreate again those folds on the back. Right, so these are some of the details that we can do when we actually try to, you know, do all these things. And these are really very practical things that we can do when we're actually representing details. These strokes, this you know, light colors, these blue tones that is used to represent this back, and of course the strokes that I used. So again, using that brush, I'm just trying to recreate, okay, again those darker areas first. Okay, so these are the shadows of the brick, right? So I'm just using these shapes to create those shadows on the bricks. So using that brush, I'm just trying to darken that shadow right there below that bag. And then I'm just going to make sure that we have some browns, and we have these, you know, brown paint that is used to create the bottom part of the bricks. Right, so we have all these very dark tones again to represent the shadow. So just make sure that this shadow is actually blending in with the rest of the ground, and just trying to make sure that these browns actually blend in with the rest of the browns. And so I'm just trying to mix different colors and just trying to think about how to represent these bricks, right? So first, paint a very light area of brown in the middle. So the reason why I actually added these light browns is because we have, you know, these bricks that are exposed under the sun, and then later on we have shadows that are being cast on this very light brown that is the bricks. Right, so we have this light brown that is cast on the brick. So I'm just trying to recreate all these details using my brush, and these are very good ways that we can do to actually make sure that we have all these, you know, different kinds of grays and blacks and different tones to actually show that we have, you know, all these different colors that make up the bricks and the things that we see on the bottom right hand side right here. And you can see that I'm spending some time to actually, you know, to show you how to do all these shadows. Right, so we have this lighter area of the brick, and just beside it we have this lighter gray tone that is actually used to depict the shadow. And then we have the side of the brick, which I'm using the dry brush technique. Using my small brush, I'm just going to use this dry brush technique to kind of like create these dry textures on the side of the brick, the sides of the brick. And then just trying to finish them up by using my fingers to kind of like smudge, you know, some of the areas that I just did. Right, so right now I'm just trying to finish up using those gray tones to combine those dry brush that I just did. So very quickly I'm just using these light brown tones to combine those gray tones and those dry brush tones, and then I'm just going to use the gray tones and the yellow tones and the brown tones to connect all these different parts together, and that will make up the side of the brick right there. Right, so we are almost done with this part of the painting, and we've seen how I actually use shadows, how I actually use the brush to create all these shadows and all these lines on the floor, and also how I used the brush to create these strokes for the back, and also how I use the small brush to create all these textures on the bricks and how they actually blend well with the rest of the ground, right? So these are some of the very important techniques that we can use to create all these textures and lines on the floor and the shadows and everything else, and that is what I want to share with you in this video. Hey everyone, it's KY Tom here. Thank you for watching my video. If you enjoyed my video, please hit the like button and comment down below. Do consider to subscribe to my channel for more art videos. Check out the links on the description below to find out more about my art, and I hope to see you in the next one.